On today's episode of The Crow's Nest, it is my pleasure to introduce to you a new guest. Now, he's not a stranger. You've heard tell of him before. If you recall, Robert Avery, aka Bobby A, he regaled us with a tale of being locked in a New York City prison over a weekend. And the only man to keep him company, the only man who had his back over those long nights, was none other than this man, Joseph Mark, a legend in his own right. On today's episode, we will be discussing two topics: the MTA in New York City and the healthcare system in our country and in the world. And if I'm honest, these are two topics I know very little about. So it was interesting for me to hear my two friends' opinions, and I learned a great deal. So get ready, get set, because here comes the conversation. Thanks for tuning in. So, Joe, thank you for finally deciding to join us for this new adventure. Thank you for coming on, and thank you, Bobby A, for tuning in. Oh, you're in Florida and you're busy, but I know that Bobby A has a story for us to start this episode off.
So I'm gonna tell you about the first time I met Joe Mark, and, and so I'm walking into work. So once again, no names or for people or companies. So I'm walking into work, and I see this motherfucker. Motherfucker walks in with the sweetest Kenneth Cole suit I've ever seen in my life, and the shoes are. It looks like he just got them spit shined 5 minutes before he walked in, and he goes over, and I'm over with him by the coat rack, and I look at this man, and I look around, and I was like, am I in a retail store right now? What's happening? And this man had showed up to work dressed better than anyone I've seen that week. And so we got to talking. We corresponded over at sports. We both like sports a lot. This guy, and then he changed his dress code. So we started calling him the coach, because he dressed like he was the special teams coach for the New York Giants. So this man is one of my favorite guests, and we're happy to have him. And that's how I wanted to kick off this introduction. So we can get into the topics now, boys, if you want.
So when I reached out to Joe to come on and to talk with us, he had a couple of subjects that he wanted to discuss, and the subjects that we kind of settled on were two. So one is the healthcare system. I think you specifically we're talking about like American healthcare system. Cool. And the second subject was the MTA. So, Joe, I mean, why don't you start it off? Like, why was that something that you wanted to talk about?
Those are two subjects that's always been on my mind, particularly with the healthcare system. Seeing, like, navigating my own way through it, and also having my sister, as she's gone through that whole system. It's a little odd to see how certain people can get really good care and not have to pay as much for the care, while others are totally underinsured or have no insurance whatsoever. It's just odd to me having to navigate through it more now that I have my own insurance through my job,
Right.
instead of insurance to my parents. So it's a bit infuriating too.
I agree with that, because as someone who recently was out of a job, I signed up for, I guess it's like the New York State Mental Health Plus. Are you familiar, Joseph, with this?
Yes.
So I went to multiple doctors and got multiple prescriptions for medicine, and I didn't pay a penny. Everything was free. And it was kind of weird, because when I was at work, you're paying like co-pays and stuff.
Mm.
It's almost, but as you said, it's weird because it's better when you don't have a job. Your insurance got better. My insurance got better when I didn't have a job. It's weird.
Yeah, because you have, for people who don't have a job or who are in extreme poverty, you have Medicaid, and that covers a lot
Absolutely. Yep.
of coverage that most people need. And then you have Medicare for people who are 65 or older, and that covers a lot of procedures as well. For the rest of the people, yeah, you're pretty much on your own. You have to either pay out of pocket or you have to pay these crazy deductibles through work.
So I mean, it's kind of backwards when you think about it. It's almost, but I guess in retrospect, what's good about the American system is at least if you don't have the means and you, let's say you have like underlying conditions and you need urgent care and things like this, you could get taken care of. But I think, I mean, we can even expand this. There's places like Canada and France where they have just, it's complete. That system is universal for everyone. And I think that's the way it should be, in my opinion.
I totally agree. I feel like with all this debate about like Medicare for all, the fact that it hasn't been, no one's really championed something like a universal healthcare system since really FDR.
Yeah.
It's been like decades and decades of just rampant abuse by private insurance, just maximizing profits, not caring about health outcomes
Hmm.
for Americans. It's just kind of infuriating to me.
So, in preparation, I kind of did a little bit of research because honestly, I don't think I know that much about our healthcare system, which is not good. I think we all should because, as you guys both described, there's you're going to need to know how your system works, whether it's through your job or through the government, whatever. So I was on Wikipedia and I just was kind of like perusing, and I just wanted to throw this out to you because I don't know if you guys are aware of this, but it says the U.S. operates under a mixed market healthcare system. So it's government sources. So there's the government, federal, state, and local that accounts for about 45% of the U.S. healthcare expenditures. And then private sources account for the remainder of the costs, with 38% of people receiving health coverage through their employers. And then there's 17% rising from other private payments. So like copay, private insurance, out of pocket, and things of that nature. Said that 12 to of citizens in the U.S. do not have health care. They don't have insurance. They're not covered. Which I thought that was lower than I had originally believed. Because 12 to 16%, I thought it was much higher.
It used to be higher with the ACA. That kind of took a big chunk out of it. But even then, like my brother, he's in and out of a job, and he doesn't really do any tax refund when he did have a job. He needed to actually pay out of pocket to get health insurance, and it was a mandate too. And he wasn't happy with having to pay a mandate to get health insurance.
Who was forcing him to get that though?
It's part of the ACA, the
Okay.
Obamacare.
All right. I see.
It's
Yes.
it's just a way to actually try to get everyone to get onto health insurance. But the best way to get people all into health insurance is to just universally cover everyone. And it was just like a backwards way of trying to lower costs. But in the end, it didn't really do that. It's really, if anything, the cost of health insurance in
That's
the
right.
U.S. is the same or even more.
Mm.
So, a couple things I want to say here. First, I think Joe, you hit the nail on the head. I, it's kind of a shame, and it does make me furious too. It's angering where the healthcare has become kind of a private business. So it's for profit at this point,
Hmm.
especially when you remove like the Medicare and Medicaid portions of it. Like the pharmaceutical companies and all these stuff,
Hmm.
they're getting people on these prescription medications, and they're just making a boatload of money off of it, and they're just not healing anyone, right? So that's the main issue in America for me. And then secondly, it's like you said, like that number, that 12% is also like that's kind of a shame, because think about like those 12% of Americans, that's still a lot of people. That's a
Yeah,
lot of
I
people.
the last time
And
I heard, I think it's
yeah.
like 29 million people.
Yeah, look at that, dude.
So
That's unreal. Like these people are in a tough situation, and it's like it should not be this way.
there's a ton more that are underinsured too, and I think that's the
Mm.
biggest problem. Some people who need some kind of procedure done, and they can't get it done because they can't afford to get the procedure done. And those are a lot of where the underlying like medical outcomes come into play. Like if someone has a let's say someone has some kind of cancer prognosis
Mm-hmm.
and they can't afford to pay for the chemo,
Yeah,
they're pretty much done. They can't really do anything.
that's absolutely right. It's a death sentence essentially. It sucks. But so yeah, so I'm like Chris a little bit in that I'm in the dark a little bit, and I've started to learn more as I applied for all these things. Um, because I was just used to company insurance. I was pretty healthy in my 20s, but now as we're getting older, like these things matter to people,
Yeah.
and it's like it's good that you have a clearer understanding of that because it is important.
Part of that
Mm.
understanding that I had is it's because my sister, she's blind, and she gets full coverage because of I think it's called SSI, so Social Security Insurance. I could be wrong in terms of what the acronym stands for, but everything is covered under that. That's and I get to see what the difference is between her coverage and then say my own coverage or my brother's coverage, and it's just drastically different.
Yeah, so I had a question actually. Well, first off, you said something that was interesting that I had not really ever thought about was, in a lot of these debates, there's the debate between those that are covered and those who are not covered, right? But you're right, because it's not just about that, it's about people who are undercovered.
I think that's a big problem.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. So I was curious though. So you were saying before how it seems that you believe in like a universal health care, at least in our country. And I was curious what you would say to those who would believe that that would lead to a brain drain in our country. And just before you answer, like I was looking up some statistics, like take Sweden, for example, right? Sweden is usually held up as a good example of like a universal health care, good coverage. I was looking at salaries. So the average, and this is from glassdoor.com, the average salary of a surgeon in Sweden in American dollars would equate to about 85,000. And then a surgeon, average surgeon, same, experience in the US would equal about 300K. So that's the one question I always have is like for cuz you see it in India, right? If you're the best physicians in India are in the US or they're in Canada or they're in another country. So would you see that happening here as well? How would you fight against that?
I think there would definitely be some kind of brain drain because of obviously the salaries are kind of inflated. I also think big that's another big part of the problem of why costs are so high. Now there are most of the doctors that tend to make that kind of salary, those are elective surgeries like let's say heart surgeries or hip replacements or things like that, where they tend to look at patients that can pay the cost for those. So those tend to be more um, affluent patients who want to get those procedures done. And also hospitals too. They're a big part of the problem. Where there's a lot of mergers going on, and a lot of other hospitals that are being shut down because one hospital is bigger than another, so they can actually negotiate a different price with different insurance companies, while
Wow.
smaller hospitals they can't really compete with the pricing. Once those hospitals go away, then the bigger hospitals they jack up the price for procedures to get done, and that causes regular employees and employers, for that matter, to have to pay bigger deductibles for certain procedures.
That's really wild stuff, Joe. I didn't know any of that. That's like how it's so wild to me that it's run like, as I said before, like I didn't really know more
Like a
about this.
business.
It's just run like a for-profit business. This is incredible. Like it's healthcare in this country is totally, as we said a couple of times, it's just totally backwards.
It is interesting because you're right. It's a very weird system, and the question I guess I have is, from my perspective, it's not 100% run like a business, because think about it in this respect: like, you are the customer. In what situations are you put in where you're given a service without knowing what it costs? I mean, honestly, not to be like funny, but the only other business I can see that's like that is like when you go to the auto mechanic, right? Like you take your car to the auto mechanic, you ask the guy, hey, this is what I think's going on. What do you think it's going to cost to fix? They never tell you outright. They give you an estimate, but you don't know what the price is going to be until job is done, and it could be much higher. And it's like, at least what I found is, like, you go to the doctor, it's kind of similar. You can't ask your doctor what something costs. They don't even know what it costs.
They definitely do.
No.
You think?
They're Yeah, I'm pretty sure they do know what certain procedures cost. They It's a combination of them wanting to make sure that, okay, I want to get the procedure done, because the doctors care about getting procedures done and getting the maximum outcome out of that procedure.
That's
But
right.
they also they don't want you to go looking for another doctor that's going to give you a better price on that procedure.
So that's my question. Do you think if all of those prices were, like, if there was true competition, if you could go to this doctor, look up his review, you got 5 stars, you do, I don't know, bypasses, right? You're going to charge me this. This doctor also has 5 stars. He's going to charge me that. Like, do you want a price match? Like, do you think if it was truly like a truly run like a business where there was competition that you could see, do you think that would solve or alleviate some of the problems? Like, would things become cheaper?
In our situation, not really, because the doctors, they're they have special they have special connections with insurance companies. So certain, let's say your employer gives you one insurance company A. You can only go to a certain number of doctors because they actually have a deal in place with those insurance companies to pay for a procedure. You can't go to Doctor B with insurance company A. So it's even more out of the realm of trying to get certain procedures done if you wanted to go to a different doctor to find out what a certain price is. So
Right.
you have to go in your network first, go in your network, and then call a bunch of different doctors and find out how much a procedure would cost. So it's a little different. You can't go to any doctor, and that's another major problem with the American in healthcare industry.
So I do have a question for you, Joe. So is it
Mhm.
the insurance that's setting the prices for the most part, and the doctors are following that?
Mm-mm. It's the doctors that are setting the price, and insurance companies are negotiating to try to make the price a little lower. But the doctors set the price.
See, that's interesting that you said that, and I trust you because I know that you and your, with your sister and your family, you've dealt with the medical industry more than probably I have as an adult. But it's funny that you say that because you hear the exact opposite many times being. Now, I'm not saying you're right or you're wrong, but you'll hear, like, a lot of times you'll hear, well, no, you'll hear that, because what you just said or what I heard was doctors inflate the price insurance tries to lower the price, what I've heard said, which is similar but a little bit different, is that there is almost a battle going on between doctors and insurance, where it's like a doctor, they know that the insurance company is going to negotiate with them, so they automatically inflate the price. But is that because of the doctor or is that because of the insurance? Like if you know someone's going to negotiate with you, you're always going to fudge the numbers. If you know that the guy that's going to pay you is always try to lowball you, what do? I'm going to ratchet up that value because I know you're going to try to like screw me. I'm not going to give you a fair price because I'm going to even make out I'm going to get less. So if it costs 100, that's the actual price. I know you're never going to pay me that. You're going to pay me 50% of that. All right, well then I'm going to charge 200. So that's what I've heard. That's what I've
often
heard.
what happens. Yeah, that's often what happens. Doctors definitely set the price, and it's up to the insurance company to try to negotiate a price in between, and then whatever they feel they want to pass on to the consumer, that would be the copay.
Yeah, that's why I've always wondered why if it would be better if there was no insurance companies. Because if there was no insurance companies, you wonder, and I could be wrong, but you wonder if prices would naturally begin to lower because
there's only one person to negotiate with. Yes, that's exactly what would happen. So if let's say if like the Canadian system or the UK system or the French system where you have the federal government, they negotiate the prices with the providers, with the doctors, there wouldn't be this discrepancy in terms of one doctor would charge a certain amount for procedure A versus another doctor that would charge a lot more for procedure A. It would just be one insurance that would actually cover the cost, and the doctors would have no choice but to pay, but to charge that cost.
So there's like an element of like implied regulation of sorts, like pressured from the government.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
That's part of the problem with the brain drain that you were talking about before. There might be, actually, there probably will be some doctors who just won't go into normal procedures. They'll probably go into elective things like plastic surgeries or high-end surgeries, things like that. But most doctors that get into the field, they want to get into the field to serve the public, not really be like a nip tuck surgeon.
True. I mean, I would imagine that it's a mixture of both because it's such a huge investment. Like if there was no, if you couldn't recoup that, then I don't know how. I mean, I wonder if people could take that burden upon themselves. You know, if you become a doctor, you want to be a doctor, but also I'm going to be in huge debt, and I know if like for example, if a doctor was only going to get paid $50K and they know that it's going to take about $200K in student loans to get me from point A to point B, I think you'd see a lot of smart people say, "Oh, I don't need to be a doctor. I'll go be a lawyer, or I'll be a software engineer or something like that."
The cost of going to medical school is also pretty crazy. There's so many different layers, so many different parts to kind of unravel in terms of why the U.S. medical care healthcare system is so dysfunctional, and part of that also is the medical school cost, because the amount of, if anything, this probably the one field that costs so much to try to get a degree, and it really shouldn't be that way either. It really shouldn't.
Mm-hmm.
So I remember what I was going to say. I had heard this, and I don't know how true this is, but it was that at this time, or maybe within the last couple of years, the largest majority of doctors, so people who go through medical school and graduate, are actually in like 3 specific fields, and that is that is dentistry. I think it's actually those 2, and the reason, and plastic surgery maybe, and the reason is those three have the most not unsupervised, but a lot of the, like, for example, like Invisalign. Invisalign is out of pocket. You got Invisalign, right?
No, I don't know if Rob did. I know I plan on getting braces myself very, very soon, but not Invisalign.
Okay, so Invisalign is like completely out of pocket. You do a finance plan, right? And same with like people who get like LASIX, like laser eye corrective surgery, and how a lot of doctors are getting into those because they don't have to deal with insurance. They don't have to deal with the government. It's pure you you want this, this is what it costs. And because but also you can compete. There's price competition. And I've heard because of that, like LASIK eye corrective surgery has decreased in price exponentially. Like it used to be maybe thousands of dollars, and now you can probably get both eyes done for under $2,000 or something, like very reasonable. And you got to wonder, would like if there was that competition, would even like bypass surgery, would that become like much cheaper than you would ever imagine if you could really say, you know what, like, all right, I can't afford that, I'm gonna go to this person, I'm gonna go to that person, I'm gonna go to this person, I'm gonna go to that person, and truly negotiate your prices.
I think that that's a bit apples and oranges because that's more of an elective surgery compared to something that is more life and death, like a bypass surgery, where you're caught a rock in a hard place where if you want to live, you need to get this bypass, so that they can charge you what pretty much whatever, and that's where the having something like universal healthcare would come into play, where these are
Right.
the costs. It's set in place. Get the
That's right.
surgery done.
Yes.
That's it.
That's right. So I figured out a cheat code. What you do, boys, is you walk into a bathroom at the LaGuardia Plaza Hotel, and you bust and you bust your face on the vanity so that you look like Ken Danicle from the New Jersey Devils in 1997, and then you get these beautiful veneers that I got going right now. That's how you do it, and I didn't pay a dime. But no, in a serious topic, like, you guys are right. Joe's right. The elective cosmetic things that just make you quote unquote look better aesthetically, those are where there's like almost like a capitalism element to it. But that's I'm cool with. Like you said, the things that matter for people's everyday living and their pain.
No, so I was looking up some random statistics. So like to deliver a baby in the US without complications, yeah, it's almost 11 grand. And that's without any complications. If there's any complications, or like you stay in the hospital an extra day or so, it could be like 30K.
That should never. It's crazy that it's 10,000, and then the U.S. has some of the highest infant infant death rates in the world when it comes to developed countries. Which no one would ever think that would be the case, but it is.
That's so there's I heard a story recently about obviously I'm gonna leave the names out, but there's like stillborn babies and stuff, and it's like, imagine that happening to you. And like, you're right, you wouldn't think like in America these things are happening, but they happen, as we said, more than almost everywhere else.
And imagine being in a traumatic situation like that, and then weeks later you have a bill sent to you for that $10,000. It just makes the situation infinitely worse.
Dude, it's probably so painful, like spiritually, emotionally, even physically. It probably makes you physically ill when that happens. It's crazy.
Okay, so I have a question. This is a solution that I came up with. And it was what. All right, so here's the scenario, Joe. What if healthcare was free to all, 100% free to all in the U.S., but it was administered via machines, and your data, all because your data, your genetic material, diseases, personal habits, all of these things a doctor would need as intake are now owned by the government. Would you still be on board with a universal government kind of run healthcare system?
No, no.
Yeah.
It certain certain procedures needs to be able to fly, and yeah, that having machines be able to do that is just not a good thing. And also having personal medical data, it's kind of that's a little dicey. I don't know if I don't know if I would want to have the federal government having that information, let alone millions of other people that would also want to have the same. So yeah, that's a little dicey to me.
Hold on, Joe. Newsflash: they already do. So let's not even pretend that. So yeah, yeah, you can just scratch that one off the list right now.
My thing is for personal data, it should stay with the doctor. There shouldn't be like a database that the federal government would have.
I mean, but dude, it's like if you expect, I mean, think about it this way. Even your insurance company knows stuff about you. I mean, that information, they know every test that's been run. Let's say you got an STD check. They know it because that was bounced off of their insurance. I mean, it's funny, but it's not funny. It's true, right? Let's say you had some type of, I don't know, interesting cosmetic surgery. Like, it's getting bounced off the insurance company. So if you're telling me that all of that is now being controlled and monitored and negotiated via the government, then you better believe they know all that stuff. So it's I don't know.
Even in that situation, I would rather it be with the federal government than a private institution where it can be put up for sale.
I was just gonna say that exactly. Yeah, you bang on with that one. I rather, even though it still sucks. Like I mean, let's face it, guys. It's 2020. Our information's out there. Every time we Google stuff, boom, the AI learns more about us. But it's like you said, I would rather the government, even though, especially the American government, we can that's an abyss I don't want to get into it right now. But I would rather that than a private corporation. Correct.
So when we discuss the MTA later on, I'm gonna bring this back up because if you trust the government, let's delve into how the MTA is operated and all of the problems that they're dealing with. But Joe, keep going. What did you were about to say something? I think I cut you off.
So one thing that Rob just reminded me of was his medical procedure that he had done, and I think that's one negative that would come into place with universal healthcare, because if everyone is getting the same coverage from any doctor, then that means that the wait can be a little long. Not to say that the wait times here in the U.S. are anything to really be proud of. 'Cause
Yeah.
I know I had some issues with my stomach, and I had to wait like months for a specialist. That would be the case if we had universal healthcare too. How long were you waiting for your procedure, Rob?
So excellent question. You took the words right out of my mouth. I was injured, and I even remember the day. It was so traumatic. February. I don't mean to bring up a pity party right now, but it was in early. It was on February 8th, and I wasn't fully whole until late April. So you're right. Like imagine me. I basically had a hole in my face for 2 months. And you're right. Like imagine waiting that long for that, like something that's so critical as to like your eating. I couldn't eat, everything was through a straw and things like that. It's great. It's wild. You're right. So there is a concern there for sure.
So when I did study abroad in Rome, and this is years ago, we're talking about like over a decade. Even then though, Italy had universal or socialized medicine. Like anyone could pretty much go to the hospital and get medical treatment. I recall that the people who ran the school that I went to, they said specifically, they were like, if you are sick, do not go to the government hospital. So anyone who had means, or you're a tourist, they would tell you, do not go to the government hospital. Go to the private hospital because the care will either A, be much more expedient, or B, the quality will be better. So it's interesting, like you said, like if that was to happen here, what would be the result? Like, would that happen where you have like government hospitals and you have a private hospitals, and again, there's still going to be a disparity because you're a doctor and you want to get paid, you're going to go to the private hospital, and that's going to be better service. So it's like, how even in that case where you have tried to remedy disparity, create equality, automatically it's gonna just happen again. People just choose to go to the private hospital, but and doctors will choose to work there over the low income hospital.
I think that's an excellent point. So we can bring this back full circle because like we kind of bemoan that, oh, it's all privatized and stuff, but honestly, as you said, you're probably getting better care in when that's the situation, and it's like, so it's kind of like you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't situation.
It depends, because there's certain countries like Canada and France and Germany that have private doctors but public insurance. And then there's the UK that actually has fully public healthcare system. You have doctors that are paid for by the government, and also coverage that is paid for by the government. So there are many ways to actually get certain things done. It's just a matter of what do you think that the people in your country would be better served getting. So it depends. I
I see what you're saying.
Sometimes I wrestle with the idea. Sometimes I wrestle with the idea of doing like a UK system, because the cost of the care is so much lower. Like I alluded to before, and like you said with your situation, the wait times can be a little long. Sometimes the coverage might not. I mean, the outcomes might not be as top notch as going to like a private doctor. So there's definitely positives and negatives to having universal health care, but I think the positives drastically outweigh the negatives. It just depends on which way you want to go about it.
No, I think that's well said. I mean, you're right. Uh, if you're someone who has no health coverage, I've never been in that particular situation except for when traveling. So it's by my own devices. So I can't really speak on that feeling of I would imagine there's a sense of I don't know, there's a fear, correct? Yeah.
It's frightening for sure.
So yeah, so with that said, it's like you're right. You have to be sympathetic, and there's really, I don't think, going to ever be a perfect system. It's a matter of what has the least amount of cons to it.
Right, the lesser evils.
So to kind of wrap up this particular topic, there's one question I had, I guess, for both of you, and it was, what if the government provided free healthcare, and it's good healthcare, like free, but in order to take advantage of this kind of the social utility, every single person needs to work for the government or in the military, has to serve their country for, let's say, like 3 years. Would that like in Israel, or I think in Sweden, I think there's a lot of countries that you have to serve in some capacity.
Of course, Chris Corvo is bringing up the proletariat military. You gotta know how to use a gun, basically, to get healthcare. That's what you're telling me. but yeah, I'll take that trade-off for sure. I think that's not a bad idea.
I mean, you could even add on to that. Like, what if it was that in order to get, you want free? Because another thing, a topic that people are talking about is like education. Like, it should be a social utility. Everyone should be able to go to college for free. What if that's what it was like? All right, you want unlimited, you want free healthcare, you want free college education. All right, everyone is going to serve it in the government in some capacity. It might be trash collecting for like 5 or 6 years, and you're going to get a free education, and you're going to get free, healthcare for the rest of your life. Would that be a worthwhile trade-off?
My answer to that would be the trade-off would be if you're going to serve that time, then also go to school during that same time as well. And if you're in the military, it cannot be overseas incursion. It has to be like a National Guard. You can't serve in a full-blown military operation if you're doing that. There has to be a separate division for people who are going to just serve their country, National Guard, serving emergency situations, and then another division where you're in the Army, you're in the Marines, and you're going on
You're
separate
going into
incursions.
battle. Yeah, right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a good distinction because like you can't force someone to be like, hey, you can take social studies for free in college, but you might have to be in a bunker and get rain down bullets on you. Yeah, that has to be voluntary. That there needs to be a separation between those two. But I think no, Chris, your idea is good. I think if we adopted some kind of like, for lack of a better term, let's call it a trade-off program, where you serve your country, you're in the government, you're contributing to everyone's general welfare and social utility. That's where you get free healthcare, and it's you're basically paying for it with your time and your work.
Do you think that the people in America would accept that? Would you think that would be something that they would?
Not at all. Nope. Look at how quickly we both answered that. No, you think fucking Reggie Ray from Alabama is gonna want to do that for us?
I think Reggie Ray would be more down to do that than a New York City hipster.
Fair enough. Yeah, I'll concede that. Yeah, you're walking down, bombing down Bedford Avenue, North 9th. Ain't nobody doing that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I was saying I think you a huge quantity of Midwestern and Southern people saying, "Oh hell yeah, I wanted to join the military already." I think you would see the coasts. I don't think you would see too many Californians that would be very open to that trade off. But I think that's a fair trade off. It's like, hey, you want something for free? There is nothing for free. You don't have the money. You have your time, and you're gonna work and study and contribute, even if it's. Imagine if all of the trash collectors in the country were people who are getting a free education. In exchange, they're garbage collectors. It's a fair trade. It's a free education.
Yeah. All right. One last comment. You know how well the sanitation guys get paid in New York? They just get paid handsomely, dude. So
this whole idea of nurses and people that are in some of the people that are in the medical field are not getting paid hazard pay.
That's right.
The Department of Sanitation, they deserve the pay that they get. As crazy as it is, they deserve to get the handsome pay like you referred to.
Yeah, I mean, go outside and look at your guys' trash sidewalk. It's like if those guys are touching that, they deserve the hazard pay. Exactly.
And they work crazy hours too.
Absolutely. We can move over. So, when was the last time you were both on a subway train? It's been a while.
For me, it's been a while. Even before this whole quarantine mess. I'd say maybe December, January.
You haven't ridden the train in 4 months? Is that what you're telling me?
I've been taking an express bus
exclusively
for that time. Yep.
Yeah, Joe has been skipping. Joe's become a little bit too bougie for the MTA subway, and is now taking like express Greyhound buses to Canarsie.
I know. Let's not really beat around the bush. Joe's getting on a Peter Pan from Canarsie. It's just firing him right into Chelsea.
So, Joe, why did you want to discuss this particular topic? Because I know you have a more hate with the MTA, and you've lived and grew up. You grew up in New York, so your MTA experience goes back to when you were a little kid.
It's just for the better part of the last 20 years, besides the time that I lived in Harlem, which was amazing, I've lived in these transit deserts where you have to take a bus ride for like maybe 10, 20 minutes, or maybe a 30-minute walk to a train station. And it's just
That's
been the
wild.
bane of my existence for 20 years. And it's just been something that's always been on my mind in terms of why haven't we fixed these issues that we've been having for the past, what, maybe 40, 50 years in New York City?
Uh, that's a goddamn excellent point because I've I'm a little jaded. I've also like Joe. We're native New Yorkers, and my house growing up was 40-second walk from the Parkchester 6 train stop. So I never dealt with what you dealt with. I can always walk out, and literally in under a minute, I'm already in the subway. That changes everything. It changes the whole situation. So that's a very excellent point that people don't think about. Where, all right, you can take the L train. You get off at Rockaway Boulevard or whatever, or no, you get off at Broadway Junction, Broadway Junction, and all right, now I gotta get on a bus, and that's another 20-minute ride. It's wild.
So for those who are listening and who don't live in New York, which there might be some, the MTA, just to give you this is all, again off Wikipedia. The MTA is short for the Metropolitan Transportation Authority, and this is a public benefit corporation that's responsible for all of the public transportation in the U.S. state of New York. They serve 12 counties. They're in downstate New York. I think even they reach into Connecticut because there's buses that go into Connecticut. But it was saying that there's over 850,000 vehicles that are moving every day. Every day, the MTA is pushing out over 850,000 vehicles. So it's buses, that's subways. This is a major agency, major corporation that runs in New York City.
So I'll kick it off. What kind of disturbs me, and I'm sure Joe will agree because we've been riding the subway for probably like 30 years, or using the MTA in general. If you're walking, like go to times before, as we said before, the whole quarantine, social distancing thing. You go to Times Square on a Saturday night, and you see how many people are paying to get in the subway. How is this corporation in debt? How? And it's just so baffling to me how they mishandle money. We're talking that one station is generating millions of dollars on a weekend.
It's a just the same thing like the with the healthcare situation. It's a myriad of reasons why MCA is like under financial constraints. Part of it is the employees. They make a lot of money, and some of them make rightfully so money. Like the people that work overnight and do maintenance on the tracks. That's that's hazardous. That's a hazardous role to play to try that the city is running 24/7, and they rightfully deserve to get paid as much as they. But there's so many like work restrictions. Their union is pretty powerful. It makes sure that they take certain breaks, they get certain pay. They have certain vacation, and certain things need to come into place for them to do the job that they need to do. So that's part of it.
So another good. Sorry, I want to jump off that point here. Another good point you made is we're also jaded because now that I'm not in New York for like indefinitely, I'll be back though. I promise. I promise. I'm coming back. There's no way I'm not coming back. It's 24/7, like you said, Joe. Like what other like, and I could get, and we've done this because I've done it with you. I can get in the subway at 4 in the morning and get home.
Oh man.
Yeah. So like, what other place can you say that can happen? So that's a good point. Like, and those people that are making sure that those things run smoothly and safely, they deserve what they get paid. So that's probably where a lot of the money is going.
So I was looking at the Wikipedia page. Interesting thing is that it says that the MTA, the amount of money that it accumulates through users will never be able to pay for the company. So it is inherently going to always be in debt if its only income is coming via users.
I have a question. Why is that though? Like, it's the operating costs and stuff like that. It's just so expensive to run that the paying just won't ever make up for it. Okay, I can see that.
It's part of that, and it's also part of like debt restructuring that they keep doing. They keep borrowing money, and they owe interest on that debt, and it just keeps ballooning. And it's like a double-edged sword where they don't get enough money from the riders, and we, to be honest, we don't really pay our fair share of what mass transit we actually get. We
It's
should
true.
pay a little bit more, but even then, the MTA, they borrow way too much money on frivolous little projects that really, that I mean, it's true, it is frivolous, like
He's
trying to
right. Yeah.
extend the 7 train from 42nd Street down to the
Hudson Yards. Yeah.
west side yards. That
Hudson
needed.
Yards. Yeah.
So it's just little things like that. It keeps ballooning.
So you guys have both traveled around the world, definitely the country. Is there a public transit system that you've come across that you were like, this is the one, like we should pretty much take this exactly how it is and adopt it here, either in our country or in our particular city, state? Like, do you have? Because I mean, here's one thing in New York that you said, Rob, that's really nice about our public transit is that it's a flat rate. That's awesome. Like for $2.75, you can go one ride. You can go one stop or you can go to the end. That's kind of awesome because most that I've seen, it's you pay for how long for distance. You're gonna go 2 stops, it's gonna be cheaper than 10 stops, and yeah, so that works out if you're taking it one stop. But like in New York, it's great because like 75, I can go anywhere. I can go to Coney Island. I could be on the train for 2 hours. Only gonna cost me $2.75.
Right. So it's like, yeah, to your point, it's like your boy, New Jersey, Philly, you're paying when you get off. That's how much you pay for, right? So Joe is right. He's exactly right. We underpay for our usage because I could go from Riverdale to Rockaway Beach, go to the beach, come back home, $5.50. That's it. And if I'm going from Doylestown to inner city Philadelphia, that's like $11 immediately. And it's not even close to the distance or time. So you're right. That's a good point. That's probably why we're so jaded, and that's why maybe we shouldn't be complaining. I don't want to ask both of you this question. It's like everyone complains about the MTA. Oh, the trains suck. I go on Twitter and I'm posting about how bad the trains are. Like we underpay. Now we have the time, which changed the entire game. Now I know that I'm not waiting on the platform for 15 minutes because I can see the time that the train's coming. That changed everything for me too. So like we have 24/7. We have people constantly maintaining it. So maybe we shouldn't be complaining about the MTA as much as we are.
So, 2 things. I think
Yeah.
people have a right to complain. For the amount of money that they pay into the system, there's so many problems that come with like since 2017, the amount of delays have been crazy. Although that they have kind of rectified that a little bit over the past year.
That's true.
The kind of coverage that certain lines get don't equal to other lines. So certain lines are actually overcrowded, while other lines are just fine. Certain lines, like the F line and the G line, they break down a lot compared to a line with the A or the C that don't break down as much. And also, to answer your question, Chris, the London Underground. Easy. I've been, when I went to London, the London Underground is it's so much better, even though they're not 24/7 either. But The way they handle the system is way better in terms of moving around people, and they have like a more expansive express system too that I think the city really needs to start doing.
I'm gonna also answer your question, Chris, because I failed to do that earlier. I just started ranting. But Joe, you're right. That's a good point you made. Because like, if you get on the green line during rush hour, forget about it. I would say I haven't experienced a system that ran as well as New York, but LA's new subway system is very underrated. It might be the cleanest like public transportation place I've ever seen. There's a new line that runs from Santa Monica into like Center City, so I took it. I was staying yeah,
Okay.
I was staying in Venice Beach, and then I went to the Los Angeles Kings game in downtown Los Angeles, and I took that train. Yeah, of course. If I'm in any city, I'm going to the hockey game, and
As you should.
and I took that train. It was like stupidly clean and comfortable. Night the temperature was perfect. The air smelled fresh, and you're not getting that in the subway. It's just you're smelling like homeless people. Someone just pissed on in the next car over already. You know that happened. So you're not getting that with New York. The LA one is a little underrated. It's just like you said, the coverage is nowhere near the same.
So I'm curious. I don't know. I never even looked this up, but so in New York, so the MTA is like private but not private. They do get money, I believe, from the government, and they also take in income. Do the public transit systems in like let's say LA? I don't know. Is that the similar relationship, or is that completely controlled by the government?
It's the latter. It's not privately funded like the MTA is.
That's something I've always been curious about. Is that like with the MTA has this like very interesting, weird relationship with the government because the government kind of props them up and kind of doesn't. So there's like a lot of like weirdness that happen. Like if you look at the Wikipedia, like the amount of like I wouldn't call it like outright like theft, but like there's been times when accountants have kind of started to delve into like the the dealings, and it's just like a lot of waste. Like more like hiring more people to do a job than is like ever really necessary. Like I was looking at one thing, it was saying that like at one time for one particular project they had hired like an additional 200 employees, like workers, to do the maintenance, and they were like each of them was making like $1,000 a day. And like the person looking at the books was like there's no reason, like there was no reason for that. So like that I think that happens, like multiply that by like 100. That's happening all the time.
Happens on so many projects, yeah.
That's right. Um, but people, it's like you raise a good topic of conversation because people think that MTA is a government agency. It's not. It's not a New York government agency. It's not like the Department of Recreation or the Department of Education. It's like half and half. It's so weird. I've never seen any system that's like that.
Yeah, it's and so with this topic, I'm curious, Joe, what what do you think would be a way to kind of alleviate some of these problems? Like, do you think they need more money? Do you like a better? Because think about it, infrastructure. You want more modern trains. That's like, all right. If they're already in debt, that's more and more money. That those problems are not going to be solved without more money, more capital.
Yeah, but Joe, I'm gonna take this one before Joe does, but
Go for it.
I want to hear your answer. But Joe is right because it's like they're taking out all these loans, and what's burying them is the interest on these loans. That's really what's doing it. But go ahead.
That's definitely they need
Yeah.
to raise more capital. If they don't do that, then the whole city is the city is not itself without the mass transit system.
Exactly right.
So they need to raise the fare. Unfortunately, they need to borrow more money. Unfortunately, they also need to like selling off their properties that because that's where they make a lot of their money from. They have like the whole west side, the Hudson Yards situation would have never came into play unless they sold the air rights to that yard. So they undersold that property. They should have millions of dollars more than they actually sold it for to a bunch of like private developers. You can't do that if you're partly a government agent. You have to sell it for market rate. They didn't do that.
See, that's right. I mean, that leads. He's exactly right because the real estate is so valuable in New York, and they didn't get what they should have for that. Maybe because there's something going on behind the scenes. Who knows? But that's also a good call out because it's actually a really nice station, and I know it well because I always get off of there to go to Comic-Con. so so I'm there. I was there pretty often this past fall. Yeah, I went to Comic-Con all 4 days. How are you for that one? But yeah, but he's right. But he's right. Like, go ahead.
Also, with London, they have congestion pricing, and I know that the state has passed that. Although they to get congestion pricing here is they just haven't figured out a way to implement it yet. So that's another way for them to raise a lot of money, but that's also going to be something that's going to piss a lot of drivers off. But there's definitely ways where they can raise money, but they have to raise more money because that the only way the city is actually going to continue to grow, or not even grow, but just not be stagnant or even go the way of Detroit and go backwards, is if they invest in mass transit. Because the best way to move people from point A to point B or from home to work is through mass transit.
That's right. It's also the cleanest way, environment friendly. But I want to hear Chris's view on it as like someone who voluntarily moved to New York. What do you think about what the changes you've seen in the system over the last couple of years?
It's a good question because I have noticed at least I would say at least a couple times in the last like year, I've like when like you're in your routine, you kind of not paying attention. And there's been a couple times where I kind of woke up and I was like, oh, I'm like the trains have been running pretty smooth because I've lived in the same area, like I've lived on the same apartment for like at least 7 years, so I've been using the same trains, same routes for the last 7 years, and I know like I live off an M train. The M train has done nothing but gotten better in the last couple of years. Its frequency, its consistency, check all of the boxes. And again, to what you said, Rob, like just that fact that like the vast majority of subway stops also have the electronic boards showing you wait time. That was a game changer, especially for me, because psychologically, waiting for a train and not knowing if it's going to come, that will weigh on you. Because about 10 minutes in, if there's no one saying any announcement on the loudspeaker, hey, like this train's not coming, you start to get annoyed. You're like, all right, am I going to wait here indefinitely? No train comes. So seeing that, like that's been a great innovation for me. I really appreciate that. But I was just gonna say, but the one thing I have noticed in recent times, let's say in the last year, has been an uptake in homelessness on the trains. I actually think it's gotten worse. It's worse now than it was when I first moved here, like a decade ago.
I think you're exactly right. I did notice the same thing. So a couple of things I want to say. That was well said. But first of all, the M train went through a lot of construction, so the M train kind of sucked a little bit. But now that they did all this work on the M line, it's a really cool train to be living off of. So you're lucky for that. But as you said, to your point, the time, like what it does for you mentally and psychologically, as you said, knowing, all right, the train is coming in 6 minutes. It's so different than when I was growing up and taking the train, where I was like, the train can be 25 minutes, it can be 1 minute. Did I just miss it? I don't know. What's happening? And it changes the way you entirely use the system. And now there's even an app where I've started for like the last year where I was there. I could time leaving the Vern and getting the G train as I would swipe in and it would be coming right there because I could see on my phone that the train is coming in 3 minutes. Boom, leave my apartment. As soon as I walk down the stairs, train's coming. So that totally changes everything.
So all those things that you
Yeah.
two have just talked about have been implemented by this dude named Andy Byford, and
Okay.
he used to run the London Underground, and then he went to go work and pretty much transform the Toronto system, and then he got York to fix the New York system after all of the breakdowns that kept happening in 2017, and then he recently resigned in January because because the governor Cuomo he kept really minimalizing his job. He kept getting his underlings to actually get any pet projects that he wanted to get done first before any other mass projects that Byford wanted to do. More new signals to get better timers for stations, to renovate stations. So he just felt minimalized, and he resigned. So I don't know what the future is going to be like now that that dude is gone, and with Cuomo and his what he's going to do with the MTA, because the state actually controls the MTA, not the city. People really don't think about that. It's not really the city; it's the state.
Right. It's like people think it's a New York City government agency. It's not. But so Cuomo has to say. But I like what you said about Toronto, because I have used the system in Toronto, and it is now. When I was there like fall 2018, and it's very similar to New York. You got the times now. It's so this guy. What's his name again? Andy.
Andy,
Yeah, I like this guy. And if
dude from England.
yeah, and now that we lost him, that's not good.
All right, so for the two guys who've lived in New York your whole life, what would you say? Because for those who've never been on New York City subways, they are ripe for stories. What would you say is the most ridiculous, scary, weird situation you've ever been confronted with on a New York City subway line?
Oh, I mean, how much time do we have? We're gonna have to split this one in two, because no, Joe. Yeah, go ahead.
So I was walking from work onto 23rd Street on my way to take the F train to go home, and
Okay.
I walked. The F train rolled into 23rd Street. Walked in. No one was in the car, and there was like maybe 10, 15 other people that walked in that were literally on the chairs. They were just chilling on the chairs. I could not believe it. So the train just ran to the next station, which is 14th Street. We all had to wait for the next one. I've never seen a subway car with maybe 15 rats, and there was no food to be had. They weren't kind of hiding. They were out in the open. And that was, I've never seen anything like that.
So yeah, I've seen fights, I've seen robberies, I've seen people using the bathroom, I've seen people reading the Bible, I've seen people getting in like lovers' quarrel arguments. Like it's the gamut. Run it all. Like I've seen it. But like, what's the one that sticks out the most for me personally is when someone, I don't know, this guy was probably a little out there. But I'm like getting on is the L train. So I'm getting on the L train. I'm going down to 8th Avenue. It's like 9 in the morning. So already like everyone's pissed off because we're on a packed L train at 9 in the morning. And my man brings his bicycle in, and I was like, "You're really gonna bring a bicycle into a rush hour train right now? Are you really trying to do this?" So he's trying to bring it in the doorway, and I'm not moving. And I'm like, and I told him, I literally said this to his face. I was like, "Listen, bud, you're not bringing this bicycle in here. Wherever you need to go, you're riding the bicycle there, because you're not coming in this train." And he's like, which is kind of stupid because it is New York. And then he got in my face. He started screaming. but then everyone else, like, everyone's trying to go to work, so everyone is like, "No, this is like, leave him alone." And then lucky I had backup, because that guy was gonna rip my head off my body if I do that. But I wouldn't move. I was like, "You're not. It's we're like in sardines in a tin can, and you're trying to bring a bike into this thing. That ain't happening, bro. Not at 9:15 in the morning." No. So that's for me personally. But like I've seen just anything you can imagine on the train. Seen it.
Well, what I find interesting is that there's certain people that gravitate to certain trains, like as far as like, I'm not even calling them homeless, just like, I don't know, these X factors, whoever these people are, they just spend their time on certain trains. And I know, like on the M train, if you go on the M train at night, because I'm usually getting out of work at around like 10:30, so I'm on the train. There's the same guy. He's really really big, has like long kind of curlyish hair, and he comes and he'll sing operatic songs for money. And he's dressed like as if he was gonna like conduct I don't know, an opera for rats.
Wait. Does he have the bow tie going with the tails with the tuxedo?
He would remind you of like if he was small. He's a big guy. He looks like he would have fit right in Tim Burton's Batman, the second one, Batman Returns. Like he's one of the Penguins like henchmen.
Yeah, you know who plays the Penguin's father in that movie? Paul Rubens, Pee Wee Herman. Little known fact. Joe knows it because he knows movies. Yeah. But yeah, I can imagine that's a perfect description because now I can picture him perfectly.
Yeah, he's just a big guy. But I would say though the most scary experience I had was I was on the L train. I was going home when I lived off the L train, and it was like not late. It was maybe like around like 7 o'clock, let's say, like not late at all. And I was standing. So I'm standing on the L train. My back is against one of the doors, right? So my back's against the door. I'm facing in towards the rest of the people. And I'm like paying attention. There's this one guy, and he's standing. He's got his hand. He's holding the guardrail, the rail. And he's like, you can tell he's intoxicated or he's on something, right? But he's dressed nice. Like he might have gone to like a happy hour. He's wearing like looks like he came from work, right? It's like button down shirt, blazer, dressed nicely. And he's doing this like thing with his foot. Like he's kind of.
Was it Joe?
In this case, it was not Joe. It was a middle-aged Asian man.
Yeah, but hold on. So quick tangent, and then I want to hear the rest of this. That's what me and Chris talked about this. That's why I like going to happy hour with Joe, because he looked like he just walked out of like JP Morgan. He looked like he walked out the JP Morgan building. Yeah. But go ahead.
Joe, when you wore suits, you should have taken a greater advantage of that. I mean, you should have been telling people that you were like, I don't know, some type of like entertainment lawyer or like an agent or something.
No, you should have said you were Ari Gold. Yeah, he's and I'm the movie star, and you're just my agent.
Actually, I'm curious. I want to talk about that for 1 second. When you were so all right, so you're dressed. So you don't know this, but Rob told us a story about your minor incarceration.
That's my favorite story of all time.
Oh God!
And it's a good story, Joe, and you come across excellent. But I'm curious, like when you were living in these different parts of New York, and you were dressed to the nines back in the day. You were wearing your literally your 3-piece suits every day, and not even the same suit. Like I think you could probably have gone like 5 days without repeating the outfit. How did people look at you when you'd go home? Because I would imagine you kind of stuck out in these different places that you lived in the city. No? Because you stuck out even in, like, Chelsea, man, you stuck out. Like, I would imagine, like, you were dressed so nice, it looked as if you came out of a magazine.
That's right. That's right. You were the best dressed person everywhere you went. And that's why, like I said, when, like, Chris and I. You got Chris Corvo there. He's rocking the V-neck T-shirt. You got me. You got me wearing a NASCAR. There's a picture of you wearing a 3-piece suit, and I have a NASCAR T-shirt on, and we're hanging out. It's like, how do these two people know each other? How are they hanging out with each other? This guy's wearing a ripped NASCAR T-shirt. This guy has a beautiful suit on.
Post quarantine, I have to find a way to bring that back.
My man, the saddest moment I think I had with you was when you told me you threw out those suits. I think I shed a little bit of a spirit tear.
Whoa, you threw them away?
It was cathartic, man. It was like you needed to do it probably to kind of like wipe that chapter, close it.
Yeah, but then he started wearing New York Giants sweatpants. It's just like it's not the same. There's not the same panache when you're at the so yeah. But it was good. It was like that was like the second iteration of Joseph Mark. That's why we love him.
Well, gentlemen, we're coming up to about we're at hour 20. So I would say let's what are some final thoughts?
Couple of things. This was a great conversation. We talked about some really like heavy topics, like people's welfare, the healthcare system in general. The MTA is also a very interesting topic, but yeah, but as we said, like the laughs are the best part of it for me. My final thoughts are, I hope if anyone's listening to this, our friends will. I know they will. I'll make them. And they're gonna love. It's just the banter and the stories. It's like we're in the locker room scenario and we're just kicking the stories out. But we do. But the cool part is we can also talk about the serious, heady subjects at the same time.
For me, it's really more for at least for where I live in this city, for things, for people to get things to get done right, we need to be able to not be afraid of fully investing in it, whether it's time, money, whatever. We need to start really caring about the things that we deal with on a day-to-day basis, like our health, like our transit, like our education, and can't take those things for granted. And we can't be selfish with those things too. The more that we can have kind of an equal footing in terms of healthcare, transit, the better off our lives are all going to be.
Awesome. Joe, thank you so much for joining us because like I said it in the beginning, we've been trying to get you on. So I'm glad that you had the time to jump on this call and have this conversation with us.
Yeah, Joe, you're coming back because we could have went another 2 hours. And I got so many Joe Mark stories. We're talking about the Tippler. I'm just gonna tease the next episode with Joe Mark. I got a Tippler story. I got a McKenna story. I got like 17 Flan stories. Got all of them. But yeah, you'll hear them next time. But thank you, Joe. It's a pleasure. It's good to see you again, bud.